Welcome to the Meat Dudes. I'm Evan.
I'm Tyler.
All right, and today, American Wagyu in the Everglades. Now, I am so excited to talk about this subject, especially with our buddy Rollins and his brother Alex. How are you guys doing?
Doing great.
Good. Well, so Alex and Rollins Brown, we met Rollins a couple of times at the American Wagyu Association conference, and then up at the Bar R auction. And every time we talk to you, Rollins, it's always fun. You always talk about your brother and how much he knows about Wagyu beef. And so I'm really interested today to talk to you guys and get to know you even more and what you do with Wagyu. But first of all, why don't you introduce yourselves? Talk about where you're from and the farm and what you guys got going on down there.
Yeah, Rollins Brown. We're from Fort Pierce, Florida. Our great-great-grandfather settled the town. Been here about 150 years.
Wow.
And pretty soon after that, different members of the family became cow hunters, which is kind of unique to Florida, right? Because we had wild ranging cattle since the 1500s. And so
That's
really
my,
got into it.
that's my cow in the background, Ron. Sorry, buddy.
Oh, that's all right.
One of the cow dogs, they're trained actually when they hear the word cattle to bark.
Yeah, 100%.
Yes.
Kudos, well-trained dogs there.
Well trained.
Sorry,
So, yeah, we were just family goes back, before the 1900s, they were cow hunters. And then I think we really became ranchers in the 20s, where they were actually able to do genetic improvements. Really came when fencing laws came to Florida. It made sense to have higher end genetics. And, you weren't just buying bulls that you would literally never see again, right? So that's when Florida started getting into genetics. A lot of it came from Texas. We did that, Herefords, Brahmins, on these Spanish scrub cows, and done a lot of Herefords, Brahmins, and crosses through the years, and then got into Brangus in the early '80s, and then Wagyu about 15 years ago.
Wow. 15. Wow. That's great. Alex, got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think so. Alex Brown, Rollins' brother, and for our operation, I'm really more involved in the direct marketing over the years. We have some other direct marketing brands, with our fruit growing business and things like that. Obviously, we've been in the cattle business for a long time, but it's really interesting, after all we've been in cattle for the longest, but we've never actually, until now, really got involved in selling it directly to customers. So it's been a really cool experience to be a part of that the last couple of years and having those conversations because we've been in it so long, but again, it's been kind of more of a trade or industry thing than it has been talking directly to to the public about it.
Absolutely, man. Well, before we get into a lot of that, because we got so much to talk about today, I want to ask you guys, what is Wagyu beef? How do you describe Wagyu beef to get us started here?
I think Wagyu is it's Japanese genetics. To us, it's just the genetics. You can raise it a myriad of different ways, but it starts with those key genetics that Continental breeds and Boss Indicus. It doesn't have anything that compares.
Yeah.
Totally.
Seriously, it can be raised anywhere, even in the Everglades. So what are you guys doing with Wagyu and why is it important to you? Because when I think of Florida, I don't think that you're supposed to be able to raise Wagyu beef in Florida, but you guys are doing a good job. So talk a little about what you guys got going on.
So our primary product, right? We're doing F1s on Brangus, not Angus, right? So it's they're a lot of people in the industry consider them Angus. It's a 3/8 of Brahman in it, and the rest is Black Angus. And they sell down here at the market and through the commercial buyers as identical to Angus. So even though it is technically a different breed, a composite breed, it's, I think in the industry is generally just considered Angus. So we're making those American Wagyu F1s, but with Brangus, which is what our environment requires with the heat and the pests and everything we deal with down here in South Florida. And same thing that people do in the rest of the Brangus region, South Texas, the southeast, and and then we do have a small seed stock program that is pretty much just for in-house use, raising our own bulls. So that's what we're doing with them, and we experimented for 12, 13 years with our own animals, making sure that this cross with the particular genetics that we were using, making sure that it was good to us first. We wanted more before we decided to sell it to other people.
Uh, just to be clear, Brahman is the cow that's got the big hump, right?
Yeah. Okay. So the
And
background on that, and I have to
okay.
realize that not everybody's from the South, right? So in the 20s and 30s, uh, people had been raising in the South these Spanish scrub cows that had been naturally selected over hundreds of years to handle the harsh, hot, super humid climate with all our mosquitoes and everything that we have down here in the swamps. And when they started bringing in some of these other continental breeds, in particular Herefords, in the 20s and 30s, they noticed that they weren't quite as hardy. And they went the other direction to the Bos Indicus, which is your Brahmins, and noticed that because of the climate that they had come from for thousands of years, they actually just thrived down in the heat. And so the modern day rule of thumb, particularly for the really hot areas, the south half of Florida, is that we need 3/8 of a Brahmin in order to make that that offspring really thrive year round.
Yeah, just to tag on to that, something I think that most people don't realize, especially because most of the American Wagyu, industry is in other regions, is that Kobe, in those areas where Wagyu come from, they're all subtropical. Those are subtropical, so that it's the same environment that we have here in South Florida. So that's one of the things that a lot of people are saying, well, how's it going to do here, right? But interestingly, you do the research, and that's actually where their genetics are historically adapted, right? In Japan, all the major areas from Japan, including Kobe, are subtropical. So we actually feel like that's probably one of the explanations why they're doing well here.
That's awesome.
Yeah, the purebred animals do fantastically down here.
Yeah.
You think that maybe be some of the reason why the Australian climate is so good for raising Wagyu?
Could be.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I mean, at the end of the day, I guess it shows they can thrive in a variety of climates, right? At the end of it, but we just thought that was interesting and explains, again, they're doing better than you would expect for the heat humidity down here.
Yeah.
So does your F1 cross, do they have big humps?
No, I think if you've been looking at them for a very long time, you could probably see the echo of it, but no, most people, you wouldn't notice it.
Hey, let me ask you guys this: you're raising F1. Did you guys choose that strictly because of the climate and it would be best for that, or did you just say maybe that the American consumer wants F1 more than they would want full blood, or what was the thought process behind that?
Yeah, it's kind of all of the above. We looked at what they were raising, what people picture as, true Wagyu, right? And it's typically they picture the A5, and it looks like more fat than meat. And while there's a time and a place for all that stuff, as I think you guys have said many, many times, your average, I think, American, when he's looking for a steak and he just wants to eat steak, that's not really what he's picturing. Doesn't necessarily know what to do with it all. And that's just an entirely different experience than what an American is expecting as a steak. When you cross it, do 50-50 with some sort of continental breed on the bottom. I don't think it has to be Angus. I think Hereford, Charolais, I think they all do fantastic because the real genetic power is coming from the Wagyu on the top side, right? The genetic alteration that it's given to it,
Yeah.
and it allows us to deliver what Americans are expecting for in a steak,
Hmm.
but prime with incredible flavor, and we can raise it in a really responsible manner because they're prone to raising themselves with that good marbling. You don't have to push it in some of the unconventional ways that maybe feedlots might do.
Right.
Yeah.
We can raise them very naturally and get an incredible steak.
Yeah. Wow. And you
Yeah, I agree. I think the target's always been prime, right?
yeah.
That's very intentional. That's not to say that there aren't some incredible eating experiences, right, that are above that grade on the BMS, right, or the A5 isn't its own special experience.
Yeah.
But we tend to think that that kind of intermuscular marbling standard of prime is still kind of a benchmark amongst consumers who want to eat a good steak, right?
Yeah.
Like
Agreed.
that's kind of our
Hey,
frame, and so yeah, prime was the target.
so when I hear prime now, I probably overthink it because we've talked to so many people who are like, "There's four stages of prime. There's three stages of prime. The USDA is changing this." So, I guess for us, on a BMS scale, if you're familiar or could place, where do you think your F1s would land on like a BMS scale?
I don't remember the numbers. Do you? I've seen them. People have brought them up a few times. Really, what our frame of reference is standard American prime,
Okay,
right? We're
okay,
just trying to go in next to what the average consumer thinks, wow, this is a really good piece of
yeah,
meat.
yeah,
We're just, for a lot of reasons, we're not chasing that super high prime stuff for a lot of reasons, right?
totally,
Cost of production, how
hmm,
many customers are out there that are really looking for it. So
yeah.
I don't really even look past that much. I just know that's not our market and not what we're doing.
Yeah, and I think there's so many consumers out there, so many different consumers. Like we talk about how it's just like wine. Some people love a $30 bottle of wine, some people love $1,000 bottle of wine. You can't have that every night, but a lot of people want that good bottle that's affordable too. And that prime, right around there, sitting at that prime, maybe 4, 5, 6 on the BMS scale, is pretty dang good if you think about it.
We
And the
we
way
often we often talk about how we want to eat a steak. Like
absolutely.
I want all the experiences, yes, but I ate a full blood flat iron the other day, and it was crazy rich, and I couldn't eat as much of it as I wanted to, and it was delicious, and I wanted some more. But I really agree that the F1 is kind of my go-to.
Yeah, and the other, I mean, obviously we're talking about marbling and fat, right, and how that contributes to flavor and tenderness and the eating qualities of the steak. Um, but again, from our frame, we're thinking about prime as being marbled enough. That's in the context of how we think about flavor, right? Which goes to the pasture raising practices, right? So we're kind of thinking the flavor angle a little bit differently than just, right, where do we end up on the marbling? Obviously, that's a component of the quality of good meat, right, or very good meat. But
Yeah.
we think there's other attributes. I'll have Rollins talk to that. I mean,
Yeah, what are those other attributes maybe besides the marbling that you guys are fond of?
Well, I think you have to look at the components of the marbling, right? Um, it goes back to this. It sounds for a second a little bit off topic, but I think that the science is pretty much established that nutrition is directly correlated to flavor, to pleasing flavor. Alex can tell us a little bit more. They've seen it across vegetables, fruits, and a bunch of different things. And that's what we think we're identifying in some of these high micronutrient pastures that we're finishing on.
Mhm.
We're seeing, and it's not. your typical grass finished flavor, right? Because we're doing a hybrid program,
Okay.
but it's very rich.
What is
It
the
is a
program?
very rich
What is the program
finish.
first of all? But like is it's a grass fed and not grass finished, or how do you guys do it?
Alex, I have to turn this fan
Yeah.
off. Alex, why don't you explain it?
Yeah. So we obviously there's a lot of different I would say controversies and ways that you can define, right?
Yeah.
Grass fed, grass finished, pasture raised.
Yeah.
I think the most clearly consistent way that we label it is pasture raised, right? Because it's predominantly grass, but there is some other supplemental feed, right? So we think that's an accurate description. Um, so it's 2 years right on pasture, and the difference is that the finishing period, it's free choice supplemental feed,
Yeah.
right? So it's not confined. So even in the finishing period, the last 4 or 5 months where that supplemental feed's available, there's still free choice grazing. And so what we're trying to achieve, I think, is if you say, grass fed, grass finished beef is a specialty item. What I mean by that is you're going to taste, right, whatever that forage, right, whatever that amount of time, whatever that genetics, right, you're going to taste that. And the risk is, and I'm sure we've all had it, is you can get a more minerally, more gamey, more off flavor, which certain consumers, don't like. Flip side is fully grain finished, right? We think it's kind of like, in a sense, making the flavor more mild. We think it's kind of taking away some of those off flavors. Um, but we think in the process of 100% grain finishing, though, it actually does pull some of the extra flavor the positive flavor, the good flavor that you can get from grass. So we're really trying to achieve that beefier, full flavor from a couple years on high quality forage, right?
Yeah.
But then avoid any minerally or off flavors in the finishing period by supplementing with feed. Does that make sense? Like, it's just a tiny. So that's a major departure, I would say, from a lot of the peers who you guys know in the American Wagyu industry. Is we're really trying to get that as much of that grass pasture raised flavor and beefiness in there, right at the edge of as little supplemental feed as possible.
Okay. And when
And
they're
still hit prime. And still
yeah,
hit prime.
it still hit prime. And when they're finishing, do you guys notice if you were like watching them, are they focused on that at supplemental feed, or is it kind of like back and forth? Are they pretty chill about it?
It's
Like, how do they
pretty
react?
interesting. It's interesting. So I have a lot of videos where I watch them, and granted, these pastures are pastures that we mulched 20 years ago. So they're literally off the chart. There's nothing we can supplement in these pastures. Every mineral and micro mineral is across the top and has been for 20 years. It's 100% regenerative, and because of that, we've never had to fertilize them. So
Wow.
the soil itself is pretty, it's pretty unique. So we'll watch. The other day I was watching some, and the average is they would spend about 20 minutes at the trough and then about 2 hours going back and grazing. And so, it's not scientific, but it makes me feel like we're going in a good direction.
Yeah. It's like the
Because,
cow.
because cows graze selectively, right?
Yeah.
So it's not loaded up with so much molasses or anything else. Matter of fact, the feed that we do use is really a stripped down finishing ration. It has nothing in it, nothing crazy, no antibiotics, no hormones, no nothing. We sat there. The guy that owns the feed mill is actually a real good buddy of mine. And I get the time where we sit through and go through the components. So I call it a clean grain, right? It's not just your typical finishing ration, which is get them as fat as possible within X number of days.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
they get that. It's got some vitamins and minerals in it, but otherwise it's a pretty stripped down feeding ration. And then they're on the really rich pasture.
Yeah,
And
and the thing to wrap your mind around on that is if you're comparing it, right, because there is that free access to pasture, we've kind of calculated in like 4 or 5 months of that free access for us equates to probably, honestly, about a month and a half of like pure, that's how little it is. So if you think of some of, again, some of our peers who are 12 months or longer, right, for when you get those high VMS, it's really a tiny amount.
Oh.
And again, that's what's different about what we're doing, right? Like we're trying to see where is the balance between flavor, and I would even say nutrition here, right? Because we're trying to avoid those high omega-6s. We're trying to make the economics work, right? I think that's a lot about what we're trying to do in Florida as a cow-calf state, right? Yeah. There's very little beef that's born here, raised here, sold here, right? And so the reason why we went to market with Everglades Ranch here is we want to preserve cattle ranching in the state of Florida and the Southeast and beyond. And one of the ways to keep it wild, right, and in pasture here is to have a profitable cattle industry. Yep. And so we really we're trying to prove a model here to keep premium beef end to end here.
Wow.
Yeah. We'd like to see other people do it, whether they do it with us or not. See it as a good way to keep family ranches in business. And when you look at what we are actually getting out of carcasses, we think eventually people will start watching and thinking, I might want to try some of that. That's pretty good return to the ranch.
Yeah. Totally. Do you think it gives you an advantage? You talked about regenerative, like 100% regenerative. Do you think that gives you an advantage in the grass feeding compared to maybe some other ranches out there that aren't regenerative? Like, how does that help you?
Hugely. Mm-hmm. And so it's really kind of an interesting story. We didn't get into this regenerative pasture thing knowingly. In roughly 2005, because of where we're located, our east line is 7 miles from the Atlantic Ocean, right? So we run along I-95. So it's real easy to get deliveries and ship stuff out and all that. We've had a I-95 exit at the center line of the ranch, for 40 years with nothing else there. So it's been real easy access. So 20 some years ago, we were approached in a big company. I think they were doing a development up on the beach, and they wanted to dump raw mulch, big, thick, industrial size pieces. And they said, and we'll pay you, I think it was like $30 a dump truck. And so we said, well, we have pastures that aren't absolutely critical that we can put out of production for a while. We'll raise our ground level and get a little extra soil out of it. No harm, no foul, right? So I think I have to ask my dad. I think 10,000 dump trucks later, we had covered with a bulldozer somewhere around 300 acres, 18 inches deep. Well, we didn't know what was going to come out of it, right? Anyway, after we had knocked down all the tropical trees that grew out of it, and we started mashing it down, 20 months later, it was growing grass, not pretty grass, but grass. Yeah. And we were able to put cows back on it. To this day, our fertilizer company comes and tests it every year. They're really looking hard for something to sell us. And every mineral is pegged across the chart. We have not used any fertilizer in 20 years. Wow. And so then, Alex, why don't you tell him about getting hooked up with Dan Kittredge and the Bionutrient Food Association? We kind of stumbled into the idea or the discovery that we actually had something really pretty amazing by having done that.
Yeah, so Dan runs the Bionutrient Food Association, and really he and I have been involved in our company. Our bigger company is members of that, but basically that's a nonprofit, and they're dedicated to really looking at field research practices and how that relates to nutrition, right, in farmer table foods. It's very similar to what our mission is as a company overall, and understanding. I'll be honest with you, without dismissing people's opinion on food or anything like that, but you hear a lot of people that have very strong opinions about food, whether it be doctors or influencers or whoever, but understanding the farming practices, right, that then relate to the flavor and nutrition directly. When you get into that science, it's pretty exciting, right? And that's what Dan, it's been really fun getting to know him. And that's a little bit of our mentality when we think about the beef program, right?
Okay.
We think about the idea, okay, what are the attributes of this? If we want to have the best flavor and nutrition, right? What do we need to have in terms of genetics, the soil, and therefore the forage, and how much time do we need? And those three legs of the stool probably are, if I had to say, what we're focused on. And if you don't have all three, then you can't achieve what we're trying to do.
No, I love that. And I hear that a little bit more now that we're talking to people, is like breeding for flavor and not just marbling. And I think that's a super important for this industry because, you know, if I kind of say it a lot, but there's a lot of us who love that high marbling. Like, you know, when we were at the American Wagyu Association conference, like it was awesome to see all that. And in front of all these people who are used to that, and producers and processors who are creating, you know, growing these cows and doing this everything the right way to make this amazing meat. But like you kind of said, at the end of the day, if I go into any grocery store and I show that to 100 people, they're going to be like, "Oh, I don't know about that. That looks too much. I don't want to handle that. That looks too fatty." And so I think like not just breeding for fat and marbling, but breeding for flavor is like what really ultimately needs to happen, because people, they could eat a totally marbled piece of steak, but if it doesn't taste good, they're not going to come back.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so important.
Like Rollins said earlier, like it really is a lot about the diet, right? Honestly, our research, and again, you know, Wagyu does have some unique parts, right? I'm sure as you go know, their fatty acid profile is different than some of the other breeds, which contributes to some of its unique flavor. But beyond that, diet is by far the biggest influence, right, on flavor, marbling, all of this.
Yeah.
And so one other thing I would say is getting back to, you know, our mission of, you know, connecting people to this beef and building a model that we can help preserve ranching in Florida, right, and hopefully beyond. It's not cheap to finish an animal for a year plus on feed. So as farmers, as ranchers, you're also thinking about the economic sustainability, right, of ranching. The more we can put ranchers in control of bringing a finished product to market economically, right? If we can figure out how little feed, right, that you can finish an animal on and still hit prime, and that's huge, right? Because that relates right back to the economics of ranching. So that's really kind of how we're thinking of it, is the idea that we want ranchers to be successful. We want consumers to have better quality beef based on our definition, right?
Yeah.
And the one other thing I would say is our testing, the lab testing we've gotten done, is our omega 6-3 ratio is 75% better than your typical grain finished American Wagyu.
That's a lot of percent.
Hopefully I'm doing the percentage right. It's like a quarter of the level. It's a quarter of the omega 6s.
But that would be grain finished anything, really.
Yeah, well, it's. I mean, I hate to say it, but like if you're talking about the really high BMS stuff, right, that goes out like 3, like that's even longer and even more. Yeah. Well, what I've researched, basically, the longer the period on supplemental feed, right, the higher those are going to be.
Yeah.
Because the ratio of grain to forage, right, you could almost see a chart that kind of maps it. And so, but even your grocery store, yeah, you're looking at, you know, say 15 to 1 omega 6 to omega 3. I think ours tested 6 to 1.
Let's see.
Wow.
So it's closer to grass-fed beef, but it's in prime grade. Again, we're doing something a little bit weird here, I guess, or different. That's hard to explain to consumers, but.
Well, could you give me an omega breakdown? Like, can you give me the omega 101? Because I feel like we talk about that a lot in the Wagyu industry.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to clearly articulate that to our consumers, just the normal people out there that are looking for good beef.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, a lot of it can be misleading. As much as I just said the ratios there, right? Those are ratios. Those aren't the absolute amounts.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. But the first thing really is to understand the three different classes of fats, right? Saturated, monounsaturated, and polyunsaturated fatty acids. That speaks to the chemical structure, the hydrogens, and the carbon chains, right? Saturated is a function of the chains being fully saturated, right? Hydrogen and carbon chains. So it's very chemically stable. That's also why you read a lot about, like, hey, use tallow for cooking, right? Use some of these things. They are saturated. They're very chemically stable at high heat. Then you go to the monounsaturated. That's usually your, you typically associate these with like fruit oils, like olive oil, avocado, some of those kind of things are your monounsaturated. Only one of the chemical chains in the chemistry there is not completely saturated, hence mono.
Yeah.
So it's more stable than the polyunsaturated fatty acids, but less than saturated fat.
Okay.
So they're good, right? So hopefully this also explains your temperature levels in your cooking oils, right? So then you go to polyunsaturated fatty acids, and that's where there's multiple types we've heard of. There's your omega-3s, your omega-6s, and your omega-9s, which not a lot of people talk about. So your PUFAs, or your polyunsaturated, the general idea is that within the PUFAs, you don't want to have too high omega-6 fatty acids in your diet. The thought being, like most things in life, it's about balance, right? And so the ideal balance historically, say pre-industrial, like say 100 years ago, it's thought that that omega-6 to 3 ratio in the US diet was like a 2 to 1, okay? Before we had more grains in our diet, seed oils, vegetable oils, all these things, right? Animals that were finished on heavy grain diets.
Yeah.
The historical omega-6 to 3 ratio is closer to 2 to 1. The current standard American diet is closer to maybe 18 to 1, 20 to 1.
Wow.
And again, just to be full disclosure, there's people that'll go both sides on this issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
There, the inflammatory argument, they'll say, well, there isn't science that says it definitely causes the inflammation, right? There's been studies. What you can say for a fact is those types of fatty acids are less stable, right? So they're more prone to oxidation. And the other thing, the way I look at it is, look at it from a historical perspective, right? Up until, say, the year 1900, the predominant fats that all of civilization ate were saturated fats.
Yeah.
You look at, from kind of a paleo or whatever perspective you want to say. So I kind of look at it as the last 100 years of really higher amounts of omega-6 fatty acids is the experiment, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it's not inherently bad. Like a lot of things, it could get bad potentially if you have too much of it.
Okay.
So that's kind of how and again, one other thing on the ratio, final point, to be perfectly objectively fair about this, right? Our ratio is better, the omega-6 to 3 ratio is better, but really the amount of omega-3s that accumulates in something like beef, if you go beyond the ratios, right, it's a fraction of what it would be in salmon, for example. Okay, so it's not only important to talk about the ratios, you can't lose sight of the absolute amounts of these things.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like our beef is probably very high in omega-3 acids compared to like a lot of other beef that you could find, and it's probably a tenth of the amount of absolute omega-3 that you'd find in salmon. Does that give you a sense?
Yeah, totally. Totally. Yes, thank you for that breakdown. It's funny, we talk about it a lot, but that was really great to kind of hear you just break down each section of that and understand it. So, man, because it's important. I think it's important. It gets thrown around a lot, so that's nice to.
I've been trying to get he and Desi Sakali on a on a Zoom or on a podcast or something and let them compare notes with some of the more scientific.
Yeah, again, I think on this topic, look, you can read, you can go into social media and see about seed oils, right? This and that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you talk about these topics, right, you just have to say, here's what we know and here's what we don't know, right? You can form your own opinion on it, but I think there's a lot of people who have very strong opinions on all these things, where it's like the science could go both ways. It's not definitive. You got to pick your side, but don't represent that it's settled, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not 100% settled. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's all I think.
General public doesn't really dive into a lot of that. They just kind of believe what they hear, or there's not a whole lot of research about that, talking about oleic acid and what's
Yeah.
good for your body, all that kind of stuff. So it's good to hear. We talk a lot about it.
Yeah.
Gosh. Yeah. You and Desi on a podcast, man. That'd be a long podcast.
That's the weird thing. It's like we have healthier premium beef. Is that a niche anyone cares about? I don't know. I think we also think it gives that beefier flavor from the grass, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of how we're looking at it. But the byproduct, it is a healthier premium piece of beef. Again, that's kind of maybe it's a niche that no one cares about, but that's kind of how we think about it.
Yeah, and I think people do. I mean, there is that grass-fed family out there that just will only eat grass-fed because they think it's more nutritious, and maybe it is. But I don't know. I think there's also those people, like, for me, that sounds great. Like, I want to eat a great steak, and if you can add some nutritional benefits to it, like, what the heck? I mean, isn't that why a lot of people only eat fish, only eat chicken, and like they're told,
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a big demographic out there that just wants something that's affordable as well, that they don't have to spend $80-$90 on to feed 3 people or anything like that.
Sure.
They can do for most nights of the week. I think that's great.
And I like the fact that you said that maybe the grass fed is more nutritious, maybe it's not, right? Like it certainly has lower omega-6 fatty acids in it, right? But it's not necessarily, if we're just being straight up, right? Like it may not have more nutrient density in it. And that's what I'm getting at is like a lot of these topics, we're really trying to connect the depth of this from an applied science of agriculture, right?
Okay.
To these kind of claims like the grass fed may be more or it may not. It depends on how that operation, right? What were their genetics? What's their forage look like? And how long do they actually have them on pasture?
Yes.
And you want that's the problem with grass fed and even grass finishing. You won't eat 2 pieces that are identical. It's a specialty, so you can't actually. You may be able to generalize about it having a healthier fatty acid profile, right? Because it doesn't have grain, but you can't generalize about anything else with it. In my opinion, it's very particular to the ranch where it comes from.
Man. And that's our huge motto is like, know where your meat comes from, because I think you just said it so eloquently that grass fed is not just one thing. It's grass fed at this ranch and grass fed at that ranch, and it means something over here and something over there. And same with Wagyu, and that's why we really wanted to start this podcast to introduce people to more ranchers and get them to understand their process and understand why they do what they do. If someone hears that you guys, I'm trying to create prime beef that has great flavor to it and has some nutritional benefits, people are gonna be like, oh wow, how do they do that? Oh, that's pretty cool. That's interesting. And that's really like what makes me want to purchase from somebody, like just like a fashion designer or anybody out there. Like that person does great things and this is their process. How I understand it. I think that's a very important thing, and that's why I love you guys talking about all this stuff, like why you do it and what makes it different. And it's not just one thing. Like F1 Wagyu is not one thing. It's something at your guys' ranch. It's something in California, And if you like what those people do, then you should support those people.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think like it's cool to be able to share our perspective and what we're doing. I think the most important thing is supporting, ranchers that are growing and raising their beef in the USA. And I think that it's awesome that you guys are highlighting that because honestly, like we can vary in terms of our opinions on what production practice or genetics or this or that. But the reality is we need more people ranching. We need more people raising local food. And that's actually the most important thing, in my opinion, that you guys are highlighting, which I think is awesome.
Man, thank you.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And just, getting to know these ranchers and what they do and how they feed their communities
Yeah.
is huge. And, you talked about the direct to consumer, and I think that's a great way to support ranches right now. So what are you guys doing with this direct to consumer program that maybe is different, or how's that supporting you guys? How can other ranchers, be great at doing that? Because that's the one thing I think right now that's going to really help small ranches.
Well, when so my brother and I, our family's been in farming and ag for a long time, and so when he and I started a law firm when we were kids, and shortly after we had an opportunity to expand in the citrus distribution, the food distribution, so we ended up with a pretty high volume company. We've been FedEx's heaviest customer for I don't know 30 years or so, and we do all these bulk boxes of citrus and gifts and honeys, nuts, chocolates, and so we had a lot of facilities. We had these giant coolers and freezers, and a few years ago, our father had been playing around with the Wagyu, kind of almost like a little experiment alongside our Brangus, and we were all real happy with the animals that we butchered every year or two and thought they were phenomenal. And he and I just kind of looked at each other and said, why are we not shipping beef? It's the ranch is like 6 miles from our food distribution facility. All we have to do is plug one hole here and get it processed. And that's kind of how we got going on this. I don't know, almost 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So we came at it from a different direction, right? From most ranchers.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's definitely on our heart if there's something we can do. We have really good shipping rates and things like that. We haven't really gotten into opening ourselves up to helping a lot of other ranchers, but I think we're on the verge of looking at what things can we do without necessarily coming in and doing a partnership or taking a profit or anything like that. What can we do for our neighbors, right? We've been here a very long time in the ranching community, predating most of the people around here, and I think that our heart is definitely in that industry in that community. So I think we will be looking at ways that we can help other people do that locally.
Yeah.
Hey, Rollins, when we met at the auction, do I remember you saying that you have collaborative with multiple different ranchers out there?
We do. Um, we've had a couple of families that we've had various farming or other partnerships with. Many of them, I think our three primary partners are going on 40 years, 50 years, and 70 years of multi-generational relationships.
Wow.
So they're pretty steady. And yeah, we've one family in particular that we've done probably the most of our farming around the southern United States and Caribbean with. Our cattle operations had always been separate, and then kind of in the last 5 years we've been running them more together. Same genetics, same
Cool.
crew. We're in coordinating our calendars. We've been selling our commercial calves together in one batch, and it's been it's been a real good system, good economies of scale, and we're starting to work with some other people too.
That's cool.
Man.
Yeah, the one thing I would just say about the direct consumer piece is, when you're in the commodity lane, right, the economics of that lane that really ultimately more or less define the production practices, right? Because you can only, you know what I mean? You do these because this is what you can afford to do because this is what you're getting. And when you look at a lot of practices and a lot of things, I look at, the end supply chain and then, right, retail distributors, wholesalers, all go all the way there. And you start to say, well, who's defining what standard, right? you got to play in that lane.
Okay.
As soon as you go outside it, there's all kinds of opportunity, right, to do things that those wholesale buyers, right, in that wholesale market doesn't value. But you need to make sure that you understand what it is consumers find value from, right?
Yeah.
And that's it's easier said than done, but from my perspective, having been in direct marketing for a long time and in the farm and table food space, when you start seeing consumers see awareness around a topic or an issue, right, and they start talking about it, and you see that gains traction, that's something to pay attention to. And, just like Angus as a breed, right, you started seeing a lot of traction, from that marketing in the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
And so that started to come to awareness for a lot of people. And then, to this day, Angus or black cattle get a premium, even wholesale, right?
Yeah.
Like 30 years later because of that marketing and that awareness. And so when you go outside of the commodity channels, you have the opportunity to vary your production practices, right? And do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What you raise animals the way you genuinely want to raise them for what you'd like to eat, period. And you get to see it all the way through, right? The flip side is that you better be doing those things knowing who is going to want to buy that, right?
Yeah. We don't quite get to Kobe levels of massaging and beer baths and whatever they do, bubble baths and stuff. But our F1s that are headed to steaks that are going to be shipped out, man, we touch those animals a lot.
Yeah.
We're in them daily. And you wouldn't do that on a commercial operation.
Absolutely not.
But we're in there with them, messing with. It feels like every day.
So my short advice is, as someone getting in direct to consumer, is you can't do the same commodity practices, right?
Yeah.
Typically, and get specialty value from consumers, right? Because if they want that commodity product, whatever it is, right? And I'm not dismissing the quality of it. I'm just saying, if you want the mainstream product, you can go into your grocery store, right, and buy.
Yeah.
You get. And therefore do those practices. It's going to be hard to do that and go to someone and say, pay me a premium as a small producer.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
it's a better longer term strategy is to figure out what you can't get in the grocery store, right?
Yeah.
One of the most is what you mentioned earlier is you're local, you're a real ranch, you can talk to the consumers. That is a value.
Yeah.
But also, does someone want no antibiotics, right? No growth hormones, and some of those kind of things. You see consumers want that, and you can do that and make it economically work in your program. You can do those kind of things that maybe are kind of more, kind of standard operating procedure in the mainstream.
Yeah,
So it's freedom, but it's also risk, and you gotta know what consumers want and what people are willing to pay for those things.
Oh, totally.
Right?
But what do we know that the Wagyu cattle are super special. So what are your consumers looking for, as far as cuts go? Because that's always interesting to us. Are you guys just mostly selling ribeyes, New Yorks, tenderloins, and ground beef? Or are people like starting to get into a little more of the crazier cuts that are a little bit less known?
You want to answer that? We've been digging into this lately.
Yeah.
It's a constant topic. I'll just say this. People want steaks.
Yeah.
And then okay, ground beef or roast after that, but they want steaks, and it is the hardest issue with the economics of having a ranch. Is everybody wants steaks, and it's only a small percentage of the animal, and we spend a lot of time, and this is where we're still learning, to be honest with you. What are the best cuts, right? And this goes back to what we just talked about, Evan, which is knowing what people want, what do they value, right? That goes down to the cut level of what we're choosing Absolutely.
right? What do people want right now? What do they not want? Those are the kind of considerations you don't have to worry about when you're doing a cow-calf operation. You're kind of selling them. When you're doing direct consumer, you better figure out what cuts people want.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're sitting with inventory and now you got to discount it, right? You're storing it, etc. So the generic people want steaks, but
well, and you guys know this, and this falls back almost into your court, what you guys have been doing with all the different cuts and experimenting with the cooking. We've been doing that too. You know, kind of something in the back of my mind thinking, you know what? These roasts would move quicker if people knew how to cook them and got the same result, or really what ought to be a better result than what they're used to, the continental beef recipes that they're going by. And so we're always looking at that, right? Should we go in more into value added products? Should we, you know, um, I don't think people cook as many roasts as they used to, right? The Sunday evening dinner.
No, I think like an interesting thing for me that I've been thinking about a lot is trying to really convert some of those people who obviously just don't want wagyu into like finding some of these cuts, like one of our buddies Charles from Superior Wagyu was like, I cut the London broil into steaks and it's a chewier steak because it's the London broil, but it's wagyu, so it's a steak I can actually grill it. So like trying to find that, like, hey, if you love that choice chewy ribeye, you'll love this wagyu London broil, and it's cheaper than your choice chewy ribeye. So
that's exactly what we're looking at right now, is trying to take some of those cuts and where can we, because we're prime, because it's wagyu, try and understand where can we develop some steak-like cuts, and will it meet the minimum level of quality, right, that we think the customer is going to want.
Right.
That's literally what we're in the process of testing.
And we try to educate as much as possible. The lesser cuts, right?
Yeah.
Everything out of the shoulder, like that. I always talk about the shoulder. There's so many good steakable items in the shoulder, even into like the clawed heart or a ranch steak or something like that, or top sirloin. A Wagyu top sirloin is fucking unbelievable.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Unreal.
We're not having any issues out of that area.
Get rid of the shoulder, the tail end is something, we got to work on. But you know what was cool is at the American Wagyu Association. No, it was the Bar R auction when they were taking that whole leg of beef and cutting steaks out of it and seeing like, is this tender enough? I thought that was really cool, and they kind of found a couple of them in there, and so I don't know. It's always going to be an experiment here to try to find steaks that are what's a good choice top sirloin out of the leg? Can we actually pick that up? So or comparable. God, it's crazy. Weird.
Yeah, you gotta share your test results of some of those different things you're experimenting. We could use it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I've been following them on some of my cooking. So what I'm doing is I'm the jack of all trades here, right? I see something. Alex is super busy at the office, and so in the team, I'm like, oh, that needs to be done. So I'm out doing crazy stuff. So I've been cooking my way through an animal, and trying the lower slower that I picked up from you guys, having great results. But again, some pieces just don't want to be staked.
Yeah, that's why smoking the meat really comes into it. With Tyler's smoked so many pieces of Wagyu, the unique cuts that people would have never thought to do.
Oh, really?
And whole muscles too, like whole picanhas.
Oh, wow.
Actually,
flat iron.
A whole flat iron cooked in the style of brisket, so you don't seam it out. You just take the whole blade and dry brine it, slow smoke it, wrap it, slow roast it, and that sinew through the middle turns into pure just meat jelly. It's
jelly.
It is mind blowing because when you seam those out, that sinew is crazy. Like it blows my mind that it could actually even break down. It's almost like gelatin.
Yeah. No, I think so.
Debbie, you mentioned something about roast before, that you like roast, and getting back to the food science piece of it, right? Which is kind of interesting. Is the amino acid profile, right, of the roast cuts is very different than the leaner cuts. And not to get into diet on a broader topic, but some of those amino acids and some of these things, right, the collagen, glycine, things like that, that you don't typically get in great quantities in some of these leaner cuts. There's a lot of great, I mean, we know like bone broth, right, all of these other things that you can get out of the animal. It's not just about like convincing someone like, hey, this is something you should try, it's delicious. There's actually a whole food component for people that don't want to eat those things, right? They're missing out on a huge amount of nutritional benefits of eating some of these different cuts and things that they might not care for. If they're only eating lean, I don't care if it's beef or chicken or whatever, right? If they're only eating lean cuts, they may not be getting balanced amino acids in their diet.
Right.
So
True.
think about there.
Yeah, and the roast thing is always interesting to me because I don't know. I think a lot of people kind of associate roasts with being kind of like the lower end cuts and things like that. So I think there's a lot of education that needs to go in cooking these roasts. And especially that's why I brought up smoking, because I think that like smoking is pretty hip and cool right now. And a lot of people love it. And it's a great way to cook meat. It's been a great way forever. But I think, taking some of these unique cuts and being able to smoke, and especially from the leg, we got to get more into the leg, Chef Tyler.
Yeah.
We got to just
Yeah.
we got to get in there. We got to smoke these London broils and see what we can do, because I think that's where it's going to be. That's going to help so many ranchers out there to be able to say, hey, you can take this piece of top round and cut it like this or smoke it like this, and this is how you do it. And it's going to be one of the best roasts or the best steaks you've ever had. And for a good price, and it's going to be a higher quality item for a better price than what you're going to go to the grocery store and buy a choice or prime ribeye at.
The smoker. I think the smoker is the base. I've been using a Yoder for about 5 years, and any of these bigger pieces go on there to start, right? And I'm staying at that 190 to 200 degree area that you guys are talking about.
Yeah.
Phenomenal, no problems. That's easy. You can put it on just like that with no concerns. Then the question is, what temperature do you take it off? Do you rest it? Do you cut it? Do you sear it? Do you do anything after that? That as far as I'm concerned, at least to that stage of the progress, that's an easy button.
Yeah.
I did not so well on a picanha this last weekend. It was a little dark, and I decided to cut it and then sear it after we had smoked it to like 105.
Oh.
Like a prime rib, you really want to be careful how you grill that on the side. Didn't work.
Yeah.
Everybody ate it. There was not a piece left, but I was disappointed. I had gotten it so close to finish it the right way, and then the sear was too hot.
Tragic.
But
Yeah,
it's
it was
good
a
that you're
tragedy.
trying that stuff, because like I think that's the scariest thing in Wagyu is somebody getting a piece that's maybe a little more expensive than normal and fucking it up, and so that's now they're never going to go back. I can't afford that, it was too hard to cook. So like the more that like guys like us do this, take one for the team and smoke an awesome piece of meat and tell people how to do it, the better, because we need to educate these people so they don't screw it up, and we can make it easy for them and have a great piece of meat.
Yeah.
It's funny because now I think about it, one of the only negative pieces of feedback that I think we received is we had a customer who's sous vide one of the cuts.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know a lot about sous vide, but you would think that would make it even more tender, whatever. But for whatever reason, it just didn't turn out right.
Yeah.
But we got feedback that was different than we've ever received on that cut, right? Like it was just like, this isn't good, and of course we're sitting there going like, did you do it right?
Right.
Did you do this? Like,
Yeah.
did you screw it up? But you can't really say that to a customer. That's another pro tip, for people that want to go D2C. The customer's almost always right.
Almost always.
Almost well,
not very
but
much.
we hooked it up with more meat, and I think it turned out fine. But that was one where someone got really gourmet on it, sous vide it, and it didn't turn out for whatever reason. And um, you know, yeah, they were disappointed.
That's one of those nerdy cook trends that people don't really research enough about before they try to do something, and then of course they blame it on your cut or whatever, right?
The meat
Yeah,
was just
yeah.
brown. Yeah, it was gray. Oh,
Like,
Tyler,
there's not a good sear on this. I've
yeah,
had it sous vide for 3 days.
3 days is the best one.
Tyler,
That's
do you think
I
that
love it.
Wagyu is more challenging to cook?
um that's kind of a loaded question. If we're talking about F1, I don't. But when we get back into the F2, 3, 4, or up into that where the fat content's so much higher,
Yeah.
the fat's an insulator already. So your meat's going to cook at a totally different level than what you're used to. Um, and I'm kind of a big not grilling when you get up into the F3, F4 levels. I like pan sear and roast those kind of steaks. Um, because if you're not babysitting your grill, you're going to get that crazy flare up. You're going to get that Burger King smell char on your steak. And, some people like that, but I think it takes away from the flavor profile of the beef that you're trying to take. It's so
Mm-hmm.
how you
Yeah,
guys raise it so well and all of that. So, yeah, it's a little bit more challenging, I think, but I wouldn't say in the F1 program very much at all because it's just an ultra marbled prime, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's more
Yeah.
more mentally challenging, I think, for people to kind of get over the fact that it's Wagyu and it's new and it's something they've never done.
yeah,
But like Tyler said, it's a lot of times it's just like cooking a steak. And
Sure
we,
is.
we, we try to tell people, even with the F1s, like I think we try to tell people to cook it in a cast iron the first time because I think that's
yeah,
really very easy to do, and you're not going to.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can do it that way and just make sure you get a great sear on both sides, pull it off, let it rest, salt it up, you're gonna have a great steak. But it's that
yeah,
sear ultimately because people like we said when people say when they think Wagyu, they think A5 and they're like, oh A5, oh I got it, it's so fatty I can't do it. And it's like, well no, it's a really nice prime. Just think about it like that and cook it
yeah,
on quickly sear it up.
yeah.
So
So
when I was growing up as a younger chef, I spent 5 years on a farm, a really small farm, and I fed 20 people Sunday dinners every Sunday. So when we would break down a hog or a cow, I had to visually break it down into 20 people portions, and then you have to use the whole animal. So that's where a lot of that old school roasts and milk braises and traditional French and Italian dishes and Spain dishes. Um, I mean, there's so much versatility in whole animal cooking, but you're gonna mess it up. You got to learn. You got to learn from your mistakes pretty quickly, especially when you're making people pay for it.
Do you guys think that's going to be a trend in terms of consumers really looking more of some of these offcuts or roasts and things in 2026? I mean, I know that there's been a lot of discussion, and of course we're happy to opine on the reasons why that the beef prices are high, right, from a producer perspective. But from a consumer perspective, right, beef prices are high, right, relatively speaking. And so, do you see people? Do you think people are going to be moving more into some of these roast cuts and have kind of that impetus to kind of really start exploring some of these other cuts?
I sure hope so.
yeah.
And for the benefit of everybody, including the ranchers, um, I sure hope so. And that's all we can do is continue to do these tests and try
Yeah,
different cuts and different braises and whatnots, and um, because the affordability is so much greater than
yeah,
tenderloin, ribeye, the 9% of your animal, right?
Yeah. I mean, I hope so too. I mean, I think our view is a little bit skewed because we're like constantly educating people. So when people come into our meat shop, they're like, "Hey, I want to try a bavette, and give me one of those flat irons. I like the purebred, not the F1." It's so we get a lot of people who are pretty educated about it, but still you know, when people hit us up, they're like, "Hey, I need some tenderloins tonight. Hey, I need some ribeyes tonight." So,
Yeah.
I think so because I think there's a lot more meat education going out there right now, especially influencers out there, people talking about meat, and people showing you how to cook different types of meat. I think is really cool, but yeah, I I think it's getting that way. But like we said, every special order that comes in, unless it's like a buddy of ours, it's usually tenderloin New York or
Ribeyes. Yep. Or a tomahawk.
or tomahawk.
Yeah, yeah.
Everybody
Like,
wants the showstopper tomahawk. They want to be the guy that walks into the party going, "Ah,
but when they see Chef Tyler cooking up a bavette or grilling up some Terrace Major, like they want to try that, And so I think
okay.
like the farmers, the ranchers out there, if we can, educate or showcase people on our websites, like, hey, this is how me and
Yeah.
Rollins and Alex, we like to cook these steaks here, and it's not the ribeye and it's something else. I think that gives people a little bit more perspective on like what's really out
Right.
there and what you guys are eating. Because like you guys don't eat ribeyes every night. Like you want to try all the different things, man. Like a lot of us, like we have a full selection of beef, and I'm like, what do I want? I'm not looking at ribeye right now, man. I'm gonna take one of the skirts home because that's what I really want to grill up.
I'm going to make tacos.
Yeah. So I don't
Yeah.
know. It's hard, but it's getting that way, like you said. But yeah, there's still so much more education to go.
For our clientele, I almost try to build them a meat passport. So it's like my original question when I meet somebody is like, "What's your favorite steak?" And they're like, "Well, I'm a ribeye guy," and I was like, "Well, you should try this because it's a." You know. And so we go around and once I kind of have that grasp with those people and they trust that I'm not just bullshitting them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, well, if you like the minerality of that one, you should try the Terrace Major. Or if you're going to do flanking ribs or like whatever. So they kind of trust and start going around the whole animal and not just come in for ribeye every time. It's pretty cool.
Mm.
And,
Yeah. That's really smart.
and you're almost selling them even a cheaper steak usually because they're looking at a ribeye, but we know we're going to sell the ribeyes. But like if we can get somebody to try a bavette and a skirt, it's going to be great for them, and they're going to have a different experience, and they're going to come in next time with the Terrace Major or the Delmonico or whatever, Or
That's
God,
right.
we sell just like I wish that the cattle were just made up of zabutons because we could just have a zabuton Denver meat shop and we would be rich people.
Well, the thing is, people are nervous to try something they haven't cooked before. They don't want to take an expensive piece of meat and and not have it turn out well. So it makes sense, and I don't want that either, right, for our customers. So yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm trying to dig into what you guys are doing and doing more cooking and saying, okay, this works, this doesn't work, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Since you guys are here, I got to ask a question about ground beef. Then, what your opinion, like when you're offering in your shop or recommending to a customer, just personally, right? Like, what do you think of in terms of the blend and the percent fat? You guys, how do you think about that?
That's a good question because if I buy a whole animal, like we do our holiday whole animal purchase, right? I'll get a full blood Wagyu, and the ground is pretty creamy, and there's so much fat in it that it's kind of hard to make like a really good burger or like even we have smash burgers on the menu, and it's a blend of purebred, so
Yeah.
there's not tons and tons of fat that comes out of it. But yeah, it's tough when you get into the full blood ground beef carcass. Boy, oh boy,
Is that like 70-30? I mean, what is
probably
At least.
yeah.
What do you do with it?
Slow and low meatloaf.
Yeah,
meatloaf a lot.
Smoked meatloaf is delightful. It's super yummy. And
my wife is cooking meatloaf for the Cowboys tomorrow. We've got to work all day.
nice.
So, some F1 meatloaf.
There you go.
I mean, burgers, right? Burgers, I know, like, it might not be the
Burgers
greatest
all day.
for burgers, but you could blend it, too, with, something else, an F1
Yeah.
and a full blood, Because I think, most people eat tons and tons of burgers. When people come in and they buy, ground beef from us, they're usually wanting great burgers. And
Yep.
so, I want to give them more options, but we also got to realize like that's what people are eating all the time. They want and Wagyu makes great burgers, makes the best burgers.
I was curious because I feel like I've seen some blends for certain food service, right, where it's like a 70-30, right? But it's like they've got a griddle with a hood system, and if there's a flare up, all the extra, they're good, but don't sell consumers that fatty, that fatty of a blend. Is it a safety issue? Is it what is it? Is it it's going to be too much fat in the pan? Why is 70-30 available over here, but you very rarely see anything beyond like an 80-20 as a consumer? I'm just curious about that.
I think that has a lot to do with society altogether, because it's the health when people see 80-20, like they don't want anything. Like ask my mother, she would never get a burger that was more than 80-20.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's what we've done forever, right? 80-20, 80-20. That's just what you hear, right? Anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, because I think of these smash burgers and people making these incredible burgers at home and stuff, and I mean, right, some of these companies double grind and do all these things. Like you just wonder, just ground beef, where's the opportunity to do something that would just like blow people away at home? If they
Right.
cooked it the right way.
Well, back in the earlier days at Lady J, when we did burgers every Thursday, I would break down, do a coarse grind, and then half of it do a fine grind, mix the two, and do an 8-ounce big fatty burger, and slow smoke it at like 220 until about 130, and then I'd pull them off and rest them for like 3 hours, and then reverse sear them. So they didn't get to that high heat element where all the fat would start to break down, so it's still super fatty and juicy. Yeah, so I mean, slower and lower almost on everything is better.
Yeah. So that's how I would do it if I'm doing it like at home. If I'm gonna cook some Wagyu burgers at home, I might even do it like on my grill in a cast iron, and maybe I start with like that super slow, kind of like smoke it out a little bit, and then bring the cast iron down on the fire at the end, and just kind of give them that good sear. But you could do that with the 70-30 because it's gonna all be caught in that cast iron and be cooking it in your own fat, and I think that would be one of the best ways to do it.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
And then you crank the heat up and toss your fries in there.
There you go.
That was shocking, bro.
How was that?
No kidding.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And let me ask you guys a fun Wagyu question here before we kind of sign it off here. Thank you so much for your time so far. This has been amazing.
No, this is great.
I love it.
We're here learning from you guys.
We love chatting with you guys, man.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, here, what's one thing about Wagyu, or what's one thing people think about Wagyu that just isn't true? Have you each got one of those? Like, what's one thing that you hear all the time about Wagyu that just isn't true that you want to put to bed right now?
I think, everybody has a picture, right, of little Japanese guys in barns giving them, funneling beer and massaging them and all that. And that's just how they do it in Japan. But Wagyu is the genetics.
Yeah.
And they can be raised in 1,000 different ways all over the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think mine would be similar in the sense that, and this is a little bit nuanced, but when you sell American Wagyu, right?
Mm-hmm.
People going, that's not real Wagyu, right? Like, well, to me, that's the one thing where it's like, it is a different product, right? And again, I commiserate with people who are seeing people confusing those lines, right? I don't think that's right to pretend that and I'm sure there's been that over the years, right? You know what I'm talking about, where people are saying, oh, it's American Kobe or whatever. Like that's not good when people confuse labels like that and go out and market that. The flip side, however, is kind of to Rollins' point, people have a conception about what is Wagyu if they're informed, right? Oh, that's Japan, that's this, it's this. And so if you're not that, then somehow you're not authentic, right? Or that's not the real thing. I see that from time to time when I read, people's comments online.
Yeah.
And I think that's a challenge from an American Wagyu standpoint is, right, Roland said, it's genetics, right? But it's its own thing here. And I think that's something that the industry and again, producers like us, we not unlike the cut discussion we just had, it's all about education and saying this is what this is, because people come in with preconceived notions.
Sure. Totally. Yeah.
And in all honesty, with the Brahman influence, the hand massaging is not going very well. We've had a lot of injuries. They really don't like to stand still. They really like to be a little more combative. We've had some serious injuries. So the massaging program is not working well down here, not yet.
Slow and steady, Rollins.
It's funny though. I feel like the same people that say American Wagyu is fake also look at Japanese Wagyu and go, "That's crazy. That's so stupid. Oh, how much marbling that is." And you're like, "Okay, well, I have this beautiful F1 cross Wagyu." And they're like, "That's fake." I'm like, "Okay, what the hell do you want, man? Like, this is raised in America, And I think another thing is American Wagyu is Wagyu genetics raised in the U.S. That is what American Wagyu is. It's not F1 cross. To me, it's not just F1 cross. It's American Wagyu raised, or Wagyu genetics raised in the United States. And I think that if we could be clear on that, I guess some people I talk to say it is a cross or it's this or that. No, it's, to me, we need to all be clear and speak the same language, because we're just confusing the consumer at this point.
Absolutely.
And all the Fed consumers, from the standpoint that, like, let's be honest, we talked earlier about grass fed or grass finished or pasture raised, and it's really hard to be a consumer and to understand here's what the USDA allows from a claim standpoint. And then, like, within a claim itself, there's such a wide range.
Yeah.
It's very hard to be a consumer and go out and say, I'm trying to buy a product and understand what it is just by casually looking at the label.
Yeah.
So you're right.
You have terms in the industry that aren't 100% nailed down within the industry. Of course, the consumers are going to be confused here and there.
Totally.
It's a little skeptical, maybe.
Dude, what's funny is that we were talking to our buddy Kevin Smith, who owns Beast and Cleaver, like one of the best butcher shops in Seattle, probably in Washington, and also like just got voted one of the best new restaurants in Seattle with Little Beast. He brings in like whole animal, chops them all up, like does everything, like is like a total meat dude. And we were talking to him about the different levels of prime, and he's like, "Oh, I didn't know there's different levels of prime." And we're like, if you don't know this guy who's like literally ordering full animals, butcher them up at two amazing spots, like just amazing places. It's like how is the consumer out there who goes to the grocery store, gonna know? So yeah, there's just the transparency is wild right now, and the confusion is out there. We just need to bring it all down and just make it easy to understand, so these people can go out there and just go, okay, I want this. This is great. This is from this farm. Yeah. And just transparent out there. I like these people. I want it to be this percent. Great.
Yeah.
What I'm buying. Does it look good to you? Yes. Then you can buy it. Does the price make sense? Yes. Then you should buy it. So that's my
I think that it's like, on one hand, consumers can't know without serious investigation what a claim means. The flip side is there are a lot of people that overweight what a claim is, right? Like, there's people that go, "Oh, well, it's organic, so it must be this, this, and this." Like, one of the common things I always see is like, you watch these, food experts, and it's like, you can watch a video about seed oils, and they'll go from saying, "Don't eat this, it has seed oils in it," and then it'll be like, "Eat this, it's organic, this meat that's been finished on massive amounts of organic grains, which has the same thing in it."
Then okay.
But even the experts there, a lot of times people go by labels. They overweight to it, right? And again, I think that is really the bigger point of what you're saying. It's like if you can get to know the person who's actually raising the meat you're buying, it kind of cuts beyond labels
Yeah.
to the reality of how they're raising the animal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
To
I don't think
go,
consumers have to rely on labels, right? When they just go, oh, this means this, or I'm not sure. Like, it's caused a lot of confusion.
It's so confusing. There's
no,
the never ever labels. Like even going into looking at eggs or chicken, right? Air chilled, no extra added hormones. Like it's
yeah.
Accent.
You know what though? You know what cuts through all that? Buy local enough to where you know that you're eating the same thing as the guy growing it.
exactly right.
Totally.
Yeah, what's funny? The local conversation and the most deceptive label right now in beef is made in USA.
Oh.
Huh.
Right? All the confusion of all the labels, it's made in USA.
As of 18 months ago at pretty sure it was the Wagyu convention, they were talking about it. That rule, that M-Cool exception was supposed to go away this month, January 2026, and I have not heard anything more about it, but that's what they told us at the convention.
Really?
Year before last.
Really?
Yep.
So okay, because that label
Supposed to.
means that it's just basically processed in the U.S.
The way it stands now, they can take animals that have been killed and processed and final packaged in foreign countries. Once it's brought into the United States, they can repackage it. When they do that, they're allowed to say product of the United States.
Okay. Any value added step, essentially, right?
That's current, yeah.
Which again, if you look at, just for context, if you look at other products, right? I don't know, the hats that we're wearing, okay? There are rules, right, about to say made in the USA on a product.
Yeah.
There are significant, FTC rules or whatever around like how you can put that mark on it. And it gets very extensive into value added processes, the raw materials, right? All of that, where that all happens. But apparently it's okay with beef.
Yeah, the food you eat.
Had it not been for this lobbied for exception, and I think it happened 18 or 20 years ago, if it wasn't for that, the American people would have woken up to the American beef shortage 10, 15 years ago when they started seeing Argentina, Brazil. Wow, where's all this stuff coming from? People would have woken up to the fact that something was going on with American ranchers and that industry was just going through a little catharsis after catharsis every year with people getting pushed out for a variety of reasons, not the least of which was the Big Four. Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that allows them to even further. We talked about commodity versus specialty earlier, right? So I talked about that commodity, those production practices. Well, right, for those larger traditional ranchers who are selling into those markets, right? Now the one thing they had, right, if it could make it, is grown in the USA, right, made in the USA. Yeah. But now that country of origin label allows those larger processors, right, to import beef from other countries and then undercut and set the floor, right, below what American ranchers can do it for. That's the net effect of that. Is the one thing they had was, in terms of that it would translate onto a label, right, that consumers would care about. Forget about all the other claims we talked about so far. Grown in the USA means something to people. Sure, and they completely adulterated the meaning of that, and in doing so, undercut the market prices that American ranchers have received because they can import it for less. Anytime you can import something for less and slap a label on it that says the same thing as American ranchers who are producing it at a higher cost, what do you think is going to happen? Right. They totally undercut American ranchers with that.
And I have no problem with somebody that wants to go in and buy Argentinian ground beef
no problem
from Hormel or whoever, right? knock yourself out. But I think they ought to have the choice of seeing the American ground beef that's truly American ground beef, right? Raised by American cowboys, American citizens, paying American taxes, following America's EPA laws, USDA laws, FDA laws, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
I think there's enough people out there that say, what, I'll pay that couple bucks more to know I know where this came from, or at least, right? I think that consumers were sort of cheated out of that choice.
Yeah, that's wild. Gosh. Well, and that's, once again, that's why we want people to know their rancher, know where your meat comes from. It's so important, and it makes such a big difference in the food you eat, the people that you support. And, that's why it's great talking to people like you. And where can people find you guys at? Like how can they get in touch with you if they want to try to order some of your meat?
It's evergladesranch.com. And that's our e-commerce brand. Our family ranch is SL Brown Ranch, and we've been there at least decades before fence laws in Florida. We're going on 125, give or so years. But yeah, evergladesranch.com itself, which is where you find the beef and where we ship from. That's we just did that a couple years ago.
Okay. So yeah, I think one of our overall goals is to eventually be like one of the hubs for people who want to find great beef. They come and find the meat dudes, and hell, you're in Florida, go find these guys. Here are these 2-3 ranches that are close to you. This is their mission. This is who they are. This is what they do, and then you can make the best choice. Go support these people, because I think that's just the most important thing that we can do right now. So
I want to taste some of your beef.
yeah,
We'll do that. We'll send you some.
We're on it.
And
yes,
and and,
yes.
and conversely, I watch you guys. I have you kind of on my weekly list so that I can get more educated and updated on the newest cooking. And I always pull something real interesting that I wouldn't know otherwise out of your podcast.
That's great.
Yes,
We'll keep
man.
getting after it for you.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
You guys are ever down in this area, if it rains too much, not to be cliche, is it raining right now, by the way?
Oh, it did last night.
No, it's supposed to be nice today. It's supposed to be decent today.
It's
It's a little
cold
gray.
down here. It's cold down here. It's what we call in South Florida, iguana fall weather. When they start falling the palm trees.
Yeah.
That's the forecast the next week. But yeah, if you're down in Florida sometime, come down and see the ranch.
I'd love to.
Yep, for sure.
Love to see you guys around. Well, thank
Got a
you
guest
guys.
house. We'll throw you up in there.
Oh heck yeah! Oh,
That's
we're going to
great.
Nashville next week. We'll be in Nashville next week. So yeah, maybe we should.
Bring the pot on the road, right?
We can make it down there. Shit.
We got to go to San Francisco right after Nashville to go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Back in it.
Oh man, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. Well, hey, one last quick question for you guys. If you guys gotta cook up one cut of beef, what's it gonna be? Ooh, I know.
I'm gonna say a skirt steak.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
My son's over here, like in my office here, and he whispered filet.
I heard him.
I'm not a filet guy. I'm not a filet guy at all. I've never been. Yeah, it's gonna be a strip. It's gonna be a strip if I have to do a steak, but I'd like to get into some of these other cuts.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Strip. Yeah. Yeah. Tyler, what are you doing right now? What do you switch it up a lot? What are you thinking right now?
I do switch it up a lot. If I had to do it right now, just because of the time of year, I think I'd probably braise a short rib.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Very nice.
Seasonal, right? You got to go seasonal with it.
Yeah, right. nice chuck, English style cut, bone in.
Oh yeah.
So good.
Very nice.
I'm gonna
We'll send you guys some smoking and cooking videos.
Yeah, dude. We'll cook it up, man. We'll cook it up and do a little video for sure. Yeah, man, I can't wait.
Be awesome. And maybe sous vide.
Yeah, for like 6 days, right?
Feed some stuff,
we talked about sous vide on one of our old podcasts, and we kind of made fun of it a little bit just because.
Sous vide
I'm not,
makes me nervous. I kind of stay away.
I'm not anti sous vide, but again, ever since that customer complaint, when I hear reverse sear on anything, I get a little nervous.
Yeah.
You know?
Reverse sear on the sous vide, yeah. I mean, you can do it. If you do it, it can be great, but it's not easy. Just throw it on the grill, man. Come on, what are we doing?
Yeah, what are we doing? What are we doing? That may be the secret, though. Those tougher cuts, though. I mean, as much as I'm joking about it, maybe we need to take some of those, and worst case, maybe the sous vide is the answer to getting it tender and cooking it low for a while and seeing what that does.
For sure.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Good. Yeah, we should try it. Yeah, we should throw it in there. Yeah. All right. I guess.
Good point. I might try it. We might have to compare notes. I might try one.
Yeah, let's do it. Well, thank you guys once again. I really appreciate you guys, Rollins and Alex Brown of Everglades Ranch, man, down in Florida. This has been really cool to hear some of this stuff about how you raise it in the climate and what you guys feel about the omegas and in the flavor, breeding for flavor. Thank you guys for doing that and not just trying to get the most marbled. I think this is a really good conversation. That's going to be something, a long lasting conversation in Wagyu for the next few years is, breeding for flavor. So this is awesome.
Yep.
Yeah. Find these guys at evergladesranch.com. Go order some of their beef. Check it out. You've heard from them. You know what they're all about. If you agree with what they do, try it out. This is awesome. We're going to try them out. I can't wait. So thank you again, guys. Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Well, we'll talk to you guys soon, and we'll sign it off for the Meat Dudes. Stay meat curious.